Welcome to this new video on reference models. A reference model basically is going to dictate how the different parts of a network infrastructure should be, how they should behave, rather how they should be, what should be their functionalities, things like that. In effect, we'll see two reference models. One is called as OSI, the Open Systems Interconnection, and second is TCP/IP. We'll see each of the details of each of these layers. Along with, we will also devise one model which is to be used in this particular discussion or this course. We'll see their comparison and also criticize their points. The OSI and TCP/IP model, each of which will be criticized. Coming to the first, the OSI reference model. OSI stands for Open Systems Interconnection, and this model was proposed by ISO, the International Organization of Standards. So open basically means the systems, the networks which are open for connection. They may be having diverse parameters, different technologies. So they are to be interconnected. So OSI basically gives the direction of how these systems should be interconnected. Now OSI, will further see, has got 7 layers. Now the design decisions why only 7 layers or specifically 7 layers are there are something like that. Now the software and hardware of a network are obviously complex, and that's why they are segregated into different sections. These functions have been segregated. So there is an abstraction called as something called as how the application should behave, how the data should be transported, how the actual physical communication should be done. So these are some of the abstractions, and there are specific layers for each of these abstractions. Now each layer performs a well-defined function which is in accordance with international standard protocols in mind, and that's how they are different layers. One more design decision was to minimize the information flow across these layers. So if you're having a perfect number of layers, optimum number of layers, the amount of information that is required to be transferred between two layers will be minimum. Otherwise, if they are two less, more information has to be transferred. If there are two more, that there are way more than what is required, maybe sometimes no information is required to be transferred, or they are redundant. That's why. And lastly, the number of layers had to be optimum, not too less, not too more. So these are the principles on which the number of layers of OSI, which is 7, was designed. Coming to the actual OSI reference models, which can be seen on the right part. But before that, we'll see an example of how exactly the parts of that reference model are designed. So we can clearly see there is a first column which is called as host A. There's the last column which is called as host B, and there are interconnections where there are two more columns seen. One is called as router, and this also is called as router. But they exactly represent, to know that, let us come to the part on left. There is a diagram that dictates one example network, or we can say internet, which has got some LANs connected to each other, wherein host A on this particular network is connected to host B on some other network using the internet. Now we need to first know what is called as a subnet. Now subnet is a collection of the routers and the communication lines which connect those routers. So that is what is called as a subnet. Now in this particular example, host A using this router is connected to host B using this direct line, as well as if this line is cut, for example like this, then host A can connect to host B using this particular line, this router in between. So that is also possible. So with that in mind, now this is the host A which has got this model or these layers. So this is the representation of the host A. This column represents this particular router. This column represents this particular router, and this column, last column, represents host B. Now imagine there are multiple such routers in between. There will be one particular column for each of the routers present. Now coming to the actual OSI reference models, as can be seen, there are 7 layers named: physical layer, which is the bottommost layer. Next is data link layer, network layer, transport layer, session layer, presentation layer, and application layer. Now before going into the details of those, we will first see the analogy that we have seen in the previous lecture or video. So we have seen there the analogy of two philosophers which are speaking different languages, which wanted to communicate with each other, wherein you have seen that whole analogy, how they employ two translators and the secretaries with which the whole communication occurs. So they think that they are speaking with each other, communicating with each other. Rather, the actual communication goes like this, the vertical way, and each of the party, the counterpart, thinks that he or she is communicating with his or her counterpart on the opposite side. So that analogy has to be taken into mind. Now the exact technical representation of the whole scenario was seen here, where there were number of layers. Each of the layer were having some interface for the communication in between those two layers. Now they were having layer N protocol, layer 5 protocol, layer 4 protocol, and things like that. So which was there for the logical communication among or between these particular layers. Now the actual communication goes to the physical medium that we have also seen. We have also seen how exactly the actual message which is generated by the philosopher is broken, or is sometimes it is attached with some headers and trailers, and then maybe sometimes it is broken into sub messages, the parts of the whole message. M is divided into M1 and M2, and that M1 and M2, each of the M1 and M2 was having some headers and possibly sometimes some trailers as well, as can be seen in this part here. So with that, once again, let us see the diagram. The first is physical, data link, and network. These three layers basically communicate, as can be seen here, with the routers. So that's why the communication is not direct with the opposite process on the layer. So apart from that, the transport, session, presentation, and application, they logically communicate with the opposite or their counterparts on the other side, and that's why these above 4 layers are called as end-to-end layer, whereas physical, data link, and network are not actually end-to-end layer. They communicate with the routers in between, and the router may be communicating with some other router, and in those steps ultimately the destination machine will be reached. That's why they are not end to end. Now going deep into the diagram, there is a protocol here between host A and the physical layer of the host A and the physical layer of the router, that is called as physical layer host router protocol. Similarly, for the data link, there is a data link layer host router protocol. For the network, there is network layer host router protocol and things like that. Now between the routers, there are internal subnet protocols between the network of one router and the network layer of the some other router. Similarly for data link and physical link, physical layer as well. So we'll now see the actual details of each of the layers. Now the first is physical layer. The physical layer is concerned with transmitting the raw bits over a communication channel. Now the communication channel may be cable, wired network if it is, or it may sometimes be wireless network as well. So there will be no physical communication channel as such. So design issues, how the physical layer should be designed, with what points in mind. So the main duty here is that whenever the sender sends one single bit of information, the receiver must receive only a single bit of information, not 2 bits for the 1 bit sent or no bits for the 1 bit sent. That means the bit sent should not be lost, or the bit sent should not be there should not be a situation that the bit the copies of the bits are created and those are received. Next, what type of signal should be used to represent 1 and 0? You know that 1 may be represented using, for example, plus 5 volts, and 0 may be, for example, plus 2 volts or 0 volt. How many nanoseconds a bit lasts? So whenever a receiver receives a bit, what is the duration of time that bit should be there with the receiver? So whether transmission is half duplex, full duplex, or simplex, you know the meaning of the words now by now. Whether the communication or the transfer of the information can be simultaneously in both the directions from sender to receiver or not, for example. How initial connection is being established, how it is then torn down when the communication is done. Now we know there is a connector called as RJ45 for connecting the cables to the ports in the switches or hubs. So how many pins the network connector has, and what is the duty of each of the pin? So these are the mechanical, electrical, timing interfaces and physical transmission medium related issues which are dealt by the physical layer. The next is data link layer. So this is the data link layer, the second layer. Now its main duty is to transform a raw transmission facility, the communication channel, into a line that logically appears to be free of undetected transmission errors. The meaning is that the communication channel may be erroneous, but it should appear to the communicating parties that it is free of errors. The data is transmitted without any errors. Now this is done by basically breaking up the input data into data frames. Now this diagram, if you can see, if you have already seen this. So the data was M. Now that was passed from layer 5 to 4, and 4 whenever the data is sent from, or the message is sent from layer 4 to 3, the message M was divided into M1 and M2. So that is what is meant at this line. Break up the input data into data frames, and each of the data frame will be then transmitted. That will be a sequential transmission. Now, whenever the data frames receive at the receiver may acknowledge them by sending what is called as the acknowledgement frame. This is so done as to confirm the sender that the frame sent by the sender has been correctly or at least received. The next is flow control. Flow control basically means that a sender may be sending at a rate which is higher, and the receiver may not be able to get those frames at that rate, and that's why the sender should be prohibited from sending the frames at that rate. So this is what is called as flow control. Once again, that may employ the feedback mechanism. Some traffic mechanism has to be implemented so that the transmitter knows that the receiver now cannot accept more data. Now, we also have gone through what is called as broadcast network. Whenever in the case of broadcast networks, whenever one party sends or one sender sends data, it is received by all other communicating parties. That is what is called as a broadcast network. Now, in the case of broadcast network, there may be multiple parties, nodes accessing the same communication channels. It is shared. So, if multiple parties start to transmit data, there may be problems, and how to control access to the shared channel is one important decision that the data link has to take, and for that it implements one more sublayer which is called as MAC sublayer or medium access control sublayer. We'll see into the details of that. The next is network layer. The third layer and very important layer. Now this layer controls the operation of the subnet. We have gone through what is called as the subnet. Most of the operations of the sublayer will be controlled by the network layer, where the main design issue here is how the packets will be routed from source to destination, how the path from source to destination will be found out for the packets. Packets are nothing but the divisions of the original message. So one strategy is that there may be static tables which are wired into the network and are rarely changed. For example, before the communication begins, the paths have been found out, how I should reach from A to C. That path is known and that is static. So how I should go from A to D, that path is known, and that is stored into the network. On the other hand, that may be dynamic, so they are changed more often to avoid failed components. For example, I need to visit B to reach from A to C, and there is one more possibility. I can also reach C by visiting D. Now B has failed. Previously the path was reported to be A, B, C. Now if B is down, now I should change to ADC. That is what is called as a modified decision. Now they can be determined at the start of each conversation in this way, before the parties log in for the session. Otherwise, on the more dynamic part, they can be highly dynamic, and for each packet a new path can be found out. So congestion handling is a new issue where too many packets are present in the subnet at the same time. Now why these too many packets are present? Either one of the sender is sending too many packets, or there are multiple senders which are allowed to send at the same time, so that multiple packets are present. In any case, if more packets are present than what the network can handle, they will get in each other's way, forming what is called as the bottlenecks. No packets will be allowed to go further, and packets will simply cease to go further. forming what is called as congestion, as we know in our daily life. Next issue is quality of service. Basically, the quality of the network service is dependent on 4 parameters. First is bandwidth, next is delay, jitter, and loss. In the case of bandwidth is the amount of information the network can transmit in unit time. It may be the communication channel where the information which is being transmitted. What is the amount of information that can be transmitted in unit time? That is what is called as the bandwidth. Next is delay. When a message is being transmitted from sender to receiver, the time required for that is what is called as the delay. Now there may be, let us say for example, 5 millisecond delay to transmit a bit from sender to receiver. Now at one time it may take 5 milliseconds. At some other time, due to some problems, for example, there is one congestion, there may be some other problems, the bit may be further delayed, and it may take 7 milliseconds. It may sometimes even take 10 milliseconds. In effect, there will be deviations in the delay or the transmission time, and these deviations in the delay is called as jitter. Now, as you have just told, so while the data is being transmitted from sender to receiver, there may be many problems, as like congestion, as like some kind of power surge. There may be multiple other problems as well, and the data or the messages which are being transmitted through the channel may get lost, or the parts of the message may get lost, and this is what is called as loss. So the quality of service once again is dependent on these 4 parameters: bandwidth, delay, jitter, and loss. Now it is the network layer's duty to overcome all those problems that occur in heterogeneous networks. Now heterogeneous networks basically are the networks where fundamentally there may be differences, even though they need to communicate. For example, one network may be wired network, the other network may be wireless. One network has got a specific message format, other may be having some other format, or the maximum limit, I should say the length of the message that can be handled, that may be different, or there may be any such differences in those networks, even though they need to connect and communicate. So it is the network layer's duty to overcome all these differences and let them communicate. Now in the case of broadcast networks that you have just seen, the routing problem is simple, as you can understand, because there is no specific path is to be found out. For all the path, the packet is to be sent, and that's why the network layer is often thin, meaning it is less responsible, has got minimum function, or even sometimes non-existent. Next is transport layer. In the case of transport layer, as we have seen, let us revisit the diagram. This is the transport layer which is connected to the other transport layer, using the transport layer on one machine is connected to transport layer on other machine using the transport protocol. And this is the true end-to-end layer, as you can see in the diagram. There is no such routers present, even though the information is being always sent to the routers. Logically, they communicate, the processes on transport layer communicate end to end. So transport layer, the main function of the transport layer is to accept the data from the layer above it. Obviously it will be session layer. Now split it into smaller units if needed, pass these to the network layer, and ensure that all such data which is divided and sent to the network layer at that particular host also arrive correctly at the other end. All this must be done very efficiently and in a hidden way, so that the upper layers are not knowing the differences or the problems which are going all in that communication. So in addition, it is also having the duty of determining what type of service to provide to the session layer and ultimately to the user of the network, because the user of the network will be using basically the application layer, which is also connected to the presentation and session layer. So the different services which are possible. One is error free point to point channel that delivers messages or bytes in the same order in which they were sent. So error free, even though the communication channel may be erroneous, the communication will be ultimately error free. Point to point, point to point means that to the parties, communicating parties, it will appear that they are directly communicating with one another. Now same order, if the message is broken down into 5 frames or 5 packets, and these packets are to be received at the receiver in the same order in which they were sent. That is what is called as in order delivery. Next is service possibility is transporting of isolated messages with no guarantees about the order of delivery. So here the messages will be individually transmitted, along with there will be no guarantee of the order of the delivery. They may come in any sequence, and it is the duty of the recipient to rearrange them in the original order. Now broadcasting of messages to multiple destinations, that may be a third possibility of service. As you already seen, transport layer is a true end-to-end layer. It carries data all the way from the source to the destination. Let me tell once again, this is a logical scenario. It appears to the parties that they are communicating end-to-end. Next is session layer. The session layer allows users on different machines to establish sessions between them. Basically, the meaning of session is that when the parties speak, they appear that they are communicating over a duration without any hindrance. The communication may be secure, and this is what is called as the notion of a session. Different services which are possible here or which are provided. First is dialogue control, keeping track of whose turn it is to transmit. As we have previously seen, in the case of simultaneous transfer, there may be some problems, so that dialogue control has to be there. Token management, preventing two parties from attempting the same critical operation simultaneously. So if for some operations it may the mutual exclusion is required. If the two parties attempt the same uh, function at the same time, there may be problem. Synchronization. So sender and receiver, as they may be on different networks, they may be having different speeds and capacities. So to make them synchronize or to make them in the same time frame, this is what is called as synchronization. For example, now imagine the receiver is downloading a big file from sender, receiving a big file from sender, and before the whole file is downloaded at the sender, in between possibly the connection may be broken, and if the same file is required once again, is to be completely transferred, the transmission has to be repeated from the first point. To prohibit that, a checkpointing mechanism may be implemented, where after certain times the receiver maintains how much of information of that file is received. So in the case of a failure, communication failure, the receiver can tell the sender that I have already received this much of information. You need to tell me, you need to send me only the remaining part. So this is what is called as the checkpointing mechanism. So this is the part of the synchronization. Next is presentation layer. This layer is concerned with the presentation of the message, that is the syntax and semantics of the information transmitted. For example, there may be differences in the way the data is represented. A character may be represented using different codes. One may be implementing Unicode, some other may be implementing some ASCII code or EBCDIC code for that matter. One machine may be big endian, the recipient may be the other machine may be little endian, where the each individual data, I mean the number may be differently represented. So the common representation is made about by having ADTs, abstract data structures, and standard encoding is also used here while in the transit. The last layer is application layer. This layer commonly contains a variety of protocols which are needed by the users. That may be those protocols may be HTTP, FTP, POP or SMTP, and RSS. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, which is used for transmitting web pages over the network. FTP stands for the File Transfer Protocol. This is used to transfer files. POP and SMTP is used for the email communication, and RSS, the really simple syndication, is used for receiving network news. Now, the TCP/IP reference model. In the case of TCP/IP, basically we'll see what is called as the ARPANET. ARPANET is the umbrella network, grandparent of all WANs which were present in the olden times. Its successor is called as the internet, which is globally present. Now, ARPANET's research was sponsored by US Department of Defense. At those times, it employed these telephone lines. After some time, when satellite and radio networks were included, now the model which was previously used was not sufficient, and there were some changes required to implement those networks, satellite and radio networks. Hence, the ability to connect diverse networks, multiple networks in a seamless way was one of the major design goals. And this particular architecture is now known as TCP/IP reference model. Now, the design criteria, as we have just in the case of OSI, are also here. First, network should be able to survive loss of subnet hardware without existing conversations being broken off. The actual hardware subnet may go down, but the communication should not come to halt. One important design criteria. Application with divergent requirements were supported, ranging from file transfer to real-time speech transmission. We've already seen the differences in these application requirements. Real-time speech transmission requires speed of delivery, real-time transfer, whereas file transfer requires in sequence and accurate transfer. Now, the exact nature of the TCP/IP reference model. There are 4 layers as can be seen: link, internet, transport, and application from bottom to top. The diagram compares the TCP/IP with the OSI. If you can see, in contrast to the 7 layers of OSI, the TCP/IP employs only 4 layers, and they coincide with the link layer coincides with the data link layer of the OSI. The internet is somewhat similar to the network layer of the OSI. Transport is in accordance with the transport layer of the OSI, and the application layer is similar to the application layer of the OSI. The presentation and the session layers are not present here. Similarly, the physical layer is also not present in the TCP/IP. The first layer, link layer of the TCP/IP. The packet switch network. It is a packet switch network. What is the packet switch network? There are 2 types of switching. One is packet switching and second is circuit switching. The circuit, as you have previously seen, is the name given to the connection along with its associated resources. So whenever connection oriented communication is done, the packet routing is called as circuit switching. And whenever there is no such notion of connection and the packets are independently routed, this is what is called as packet switching. So TCP/IP's link layer will be rather implementing the packet switching. So connectionless layer that runs across different networks. As we have just seen, it's a connectionless layer. So there will be no such notion of what is a connection is there. It is the lowest layer. This describes the links such as serial lines and classic Ethernet, what they should do to meet the needs of connectionless internet layer. The above layer is internet layer, that will be connectionless, and what the actual communication lines they should be providing, what services they should be providing, or what characteristics they should be having. So this is defined by the link layer. More importantly, the link layer is not actually a layer in the classical sense of the term. It's an interface between the host and the transmission links. So the meaning of that, basically a layer, what a layer should be having, that was clearly defined in OSI. What services it should be having, what functions it should be having. Then we have seen the notion of what is called as the protocols, what they can be present in the layer, in a particular layer. We also seen the notion of what is called as the interface. Interface, protocols and layers are fundamentally different. They are all having their own meaning, but in the case of TCP/IP, the link layer is not basically a layer. It's basically an interface between the physical layer and the data link layer. Internet layer. The next is internet layer. This holds the whole architecture together in the sense that it performs a very important job to permit hosts to inject packets into any network and have them travel independently to the destination. And that destination may be potentially on a different network, different type of network. Packets may arrive in completely random order from the original, and the higher layer, the duty of higher layer is to rearrange them if in order delivery is required. The internet layer defines an official packet format and protocol, which is very important. Internet protocol, IP it is called as. Packet routing is a major issue, and IP has not proven effective at avoiding the congestion problem that you have previously seen. Transport layer. It is designed to allow peer entities on the source and the destination machines to carry out a conversation similarly to the OSI transport layer. Now there are two end-to-end protocols used. One is called as the TCP and the second is called as the UDP, Transmission Control Protocol, and User Datagram Protocol. In the case of TCP, it's a reliable connection-oriented protocol that allows a byte stream that is coming from one machine to be delivered without error on any other machine in the internet. For this, it divides the incoming byte stream into discrete messages. Now passes each of these into on internet layer onto the internet layer. At the receiver, the TCP process reassembles the received messages. So imagine there are two hosts, one host A and host B. The TCP on host A will be accepting the data, will be dividing into different parts, and then will be sending it to the internet layer. At the recipient side, the transport layer at that particular side will be combining those and then will be passing it onto the session layer and so on. Flow control is also done by TCP to ensure that fast sender does not swamp off a slow receiver. We have seen what is called as the flow control. UDP, the user datagram protocol, which is opposite to what is TCP is. It's an unreliable connectionless protocol. For applications, there may be some applications which does not require the overhead of TCP sequencing and flow control, where the time is lost. and they want to provide their own sequencing and flow control, for example. Or there may be a situation that for some critical applications where time is more important than accuracy, like speech and video, once again the TCP may be proved to be a delayed communication. That's why UDP is used. Now, some of the protocols which are used for TCP/IP are as shown. The link layer employs DSL, SONET, 802.11, and Ethernet. Internet layer may be having IP, ICMP, Internet Control Message Protocol. Transport, as we have just seen, TCP and UDP. An application layer may be having HTTP, SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, RTP, and DNS. So this part already we have seen. So these are some of the protocols which are employed in the application layer. Now the actual model that is used for the discussion henceforth in this particular course is a combination of the OSI as well as TCP/IP. So we will be having a combined model which is having the physical, link, network, transport, and application. These 5 layers will be present in one hypothetical model which will be used in this particular discussion. Now, yes, this you have already seen. In the case of the model used in this particular course, there will be 5 layers present, and we'll concentrate mainly on these protocols: TCP/IP, 802.11, SONET, and Bluetooth. We have previously seen what is the notion of what is called as services, interfaces, and protocol. Service: each layer provides a service to the layer above it. The service definition only tells what the operation is possible without telling how the operation will be done. Interface gives out the processes above it how to access that layer. It specifies what the parameters are and what results the layer above it can expect. The layer also says nothing about how the duties will be performed inside. And the protocol is basically a set of rules, we can say. The layers protocol is the own business of that particular layer. It can be the layer is free to use any protocols as long as the services in that layer are not required to be changed. The provided by the layers are not required to be changed, and the softwares which are implemented in the above the top layers are not required to be changed, or they are not affected. The protocols can be changed. Now this is very similar to the object-oriented programming, wherein there may be some objects. They implement the data and methods. The data and methods are the property of that particular object. Property in the general sense I am telling here, because property has got also a notion for object-oriented programming. Data and methods are inside the object. The data may not be directly accessible to the other parties or other objects. The data can be accessed with the help of methods. The methods define how the object will behave. Data defines what the object is. The part of the object which is the code will not be accessible to the other objects. The data will not be accessible to the other objects. The meaning or the value of those data can be accessed with the help of what is called as the interface, object interface. Now, the properties of TCP/IP. Interestingly, TCP/IP does not originally distinguish between, as we have just seen, the 3 parts: services, interfaces, and protocols. This is because the model was retrofitted after the fact to make it more like OSI. However, OSI model has better hidden protocols than in the TCP/IP model and can be replaced relatively easily as the technology changes. Protocols in the TCP/IP cannot be easily changed as they can be in the case of OSI, in simple words, because TCP/IP is dependent on protocols and OSI is not dependent on protocols. Now, the OSI reference model was devised before the corresponding protocols were invented. OSI model was first devised and then the protocols emerged, and this ordering means that the model was not biased toward any set of protocols, and that's why it was more general. But the downside of this fact was that the designers did not have much experience with the subject and did not have a good idea of which functionality to put in which layer. In the case of TCP/IP, the reverse was true. Protocols came first and the model was really just a description of what the existing protocols they are there. So there was no problem as such to fit the protocols to the model, but the reverse was the problem. The trouble was that the model did not fit any other protocol stacks other than the TCP/IP. Now we'll see the critique of both OSI and the TCP/IP. In the case of OSI, bad timing. As can be seen in the diagram, for any technology, the research is first. After the research is done, then come standards. And after the standards are finally done, if the billion-dollar investment starts, everything goes well. Now, practically, it does not happen so. When some technology emerges out, before the research is fully completed, sometimes the investment from government, maybe from government or some other entities, will start into that research. They will start devising the product out of it before the standards for that research are fully developed, and that's why there is no such time for the standards to be fully defined, and that's how research and billion-dollar investment are taken to be two elephants which rather crunch standards. This is the problem, and that exactly what the story was there with OSI. Bad timing, bad technology. OSI model and the protocols defined into it are both flawed. The choice of several layers was more political than technical. Now, why this is? Because two of the layers, session layer and presentation layer, were nearly empty. They were not having much of the functionality. Rather, much of the functionality was there with the applications. The functionality of session and presentation was to be managed by the application present in the application layer. That's why no duty was left to session layers and presentation layer. Whereas the two other layers, the data link and network, they were overburdened. They were overfull. Model and its associated service definitions and protocols is extraordinarily complex. Some functions, for example, addressing, flow control, and error control, reappear again and again in each layer. For example, we have specifically seen data link layer also controls errors, and that is the duty of also the transport layer. Flow control is also there with the DLL, data link layer, and that is there with the transport layer. Addressing is also required in network as well as some part into data link. Bad implementation. Now, given this, all these problems that we have discussed so far and the complexity, initial implementation of the OSI were huge. They were unnecessarily unwieldy, meaning that they were difficult to manage and they were slow. Whereas in the case of TCP/IP, it was the implementation was quite good and free. The last criticism on OSI is bad politics. In the case of TCP/IP, it was correctly considered to be emerged in the US by academic institutions. It was mainly thought to be part of Unix. whereas OSI was thought to be creature of European telecommunication ministries, European community, and later the US government. Meaning basically these are the government entities which are taking interest into OSI model and pressing it further without knowing that OSI was not that correct, precise. That's how it is the bad politics of OSI. Now coming to the criticism of TCP/IP, as previously seen, the TCP/IP came later than the protocols, and the intention of the TCP/IP was to implement the existing well-working protocols, and that's how it does not. It does not clearly distinguish between the concepts of services, interfaces, and protocols. That part is different. The first part is that the TCP/IP does not distinguish clearly in the services, interfaces, and protocols. Some layers are having the notion of services combined with interfaces. In the case of link layer, we have seen previously. Now, for any good software developed, it is required that there should be a clear-cut distinguishment between the specification and the implementation. That was not there in the TCP/IP. As we already seen, the link layer is not really a layer at all. It's an interface between the network and the data link layers. The distinction between an interface and a layer is important. TCP/IP model does not distinguish between the physical and the data link layer as well, because physical layer has to do with the transmission of the data through the communication channel. For example, that may be a copper wire, fiber optics, or that may be even wireless communication. A data link layer's job is to delimit the start and end of frames and get them from the source to the destination reliably. So these are the clear-cut differences in the physical and data link layer, which are now combined into one link layer, into TCP/IP. IP and TCP protocols were carefully thought of, but the other protocols were simply ad hoc. For example, in the case of Telnet, which is employed in the application layer, that was basically designed for a 10 character per second mechanical tel type terminal, and that was not having any idea about the GUI and mouse being used in some applications. So that was not able to handle those applications. So in this way, we have seen what is basically a reference model, which rather defines or gives a layout of how the network infrastructure should be, including the layers and their functionalities, as well as interface and services. We have seen two such reference model. One is called as OSI and TCP/IP. We have seen the intricacies of each of them. We have compared them together. We have then defined a model to be used for our course, and then we have criticized each OSI as well as the TCP/IP model. Last but not the least, we can have simply, there are 7 layers in OSI. You can see, yes, here. So physical data link, network, transport station, presentation, and application. And there are 4 layers in the TCP/IP. So people implement some acronyms like TDNTSPA or APSTNDP to memorize the names of the OSI layer. Similarly, the same approach can be implemented here. There are only 4 layers here, TCP/IP, no problem. LITA, LITA can be memorized. So you may implement any of that, or simply you may memorize the names as such. So this is how we have seen the reference models and their functionalities and their comparison as well as criticism. Thank you.